Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Michael.
Now, if I were to ask you to describe some type of medical technology, what would be the first thing that comes to mind?
The HP 8020A.
Okay. So tell me what the HP 8020A is.
It is the world's first non-invasive fetal heart monitor, debuted in 1968.
Having had two babies, and I go through the process of, listen to the heartbeat. That is such an amazing moment. You get the and it's like a little microphone, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Wait. Michael, what is the first bit of medical tech you would think of?
So the first thing that I thought of was the MRI machine. Not that I've ever been in one or actually see one in person, but MRI machines are pretty cool. Now, Sam, today we are looking at the intersection between technology and medicine, because we're going to be looking to how technology can help diagnose, discover and treat catastrophic illnesses in children. I'm Michael Bird.
I'm Sam Jarrell.
And welcome to Technology Now from HPE.
So, Michael, we're talking about medical tech this week. Why?
Yes, good question. We absolutely are. Medical tools are some of the oldest artifacts we've discovered. Did you know there are 5,000-year-old copper knives believed to be early Sumerian surgical instruments, and archaic trephines, the bone drills used for making holes in human skulls during trepanning, which was an archaic medical procedure, have been found across multiple Neolithic sites. So we know that humans as a species have been creating medical technology since some of the earliest civilizations.
And I guess that as we created new materials or improved metal production and purification techniques, these medical devices probably improved with it?
Yeah, exactly. Medical tools have continued to evolve from these ancient devices made of obsidian or rough copper to the highly pure steel used in needles or scalpels today, alongside advanced medical machinery, which we use for scans or treatments that we talked about at the top of the show. And that is exactly what we are exploring in today's episode, as I had the amazing opportunity to chat with Keith Perry, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer for St Jude Children's Research Hospital. Now, St Jude was founded back in 1962 with a dream that no child should die in the dawn of life. So, as well as being a specialist hospital treating catastrophic pediatric diseases, they are also a centre of research to try and find ways to improve prevention techniques and treatment plans in the future. Now, just a quick note for this episode, given that St Jude Children's Research Hospital is a paediatric hospital, we did want to give you, our listeners, a quick heads up that the interview in this episode will include some discussions of illness and death, so please use your discretion if you wish to listen.
Thanks for that, Michael. And I am really looking forward to this interview. However, before your chat with Keith, I want to take a moment to explore one of the most iconic medical technologies ever created. It's time for Technology Then. So, let's talk about one of the most common types of medical examination performed every year, the X-ray.
Ah, yes.
Yes. According to a 2019 paper published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, 55.1% of all medical imaging procedures between 2000 and 2016 across the USA, as well as the state of Ontario and Canada, included some sort of X-ray. They were discovered in 1895, and it's pretty fair to say they changed the world of medicine forever. Do you know what the X in X-ray stands for?
Excellent. It stands for excellent.
Not quite. So, like many scientific discoveries, X-rays were found by accident. A Bavarian physicist called Wilhelm Röntgen was doing an experiment, and he was surprised to discover some sort of green light was passing through the black paper designed to block it. Upon further experimentation, he found that this mysterious light passed through not just the paper, but most of the substances he tested with only dark shadows of some solid objects being able to block it. The X? Well, if you've ever done algebra, the X is simply for something you don't know.
Oh, no.
It's the mystery factor, yeah.
Got it.
But it didn't stop there. With more testing, Röntgen quickly discovered that these X-rays would pass through human tissue and could reveal the bones within. Röntgen took what we now call the first medical X-ray just 6 weeks after the initial discovery, which showed the hand of his wife, Anna Bertha Ludwig, who upon seeing the image allegedly claimed, "I have seen my own death." And we will link to that picture in the show notes if you want to see death yourself. Or see it yourself. I'm kidding. Well, news of the X-ray spread around the world, catching on almost immediately as it allowed diagnosis of all sorts of issues without invasive procedures. In 1901, Röntgen was awarded with the inaugural Nobel Prize in Physics. Congratulations. The discovery of X-rays paved the way for many more imaging techniques, including MRIs, as we discussed before, CT scans, ultrasounds, ECGs, the works, and all of that from an accident in a physics lab.
I think we take it for granted that you break a bone or, there's, something not quite right with your body. You can go and get these non-invasive tests. So, yeah, medical technology is amazing, isn't it?
Makes me really grateful to live in the age that we live in.
I 100% agree with you. That and anesthetics. Now, we still use X-rays at hospitals. However, the way the information we learn from them is stored and processed and used has changed drastically as new technologies have been discovered and invented. So, to find out more about how one hospital uses cutting-edge technology in medicine, I spoke with Keith Perry, Senior Vice President and Chief Information Officer at St Jude Children's Research Hospital, and I started by asking him, what role does technology play at the hospital?
So we can't advance the mission without technology. You can't treat that child in front of you without electronic health record. You can for a period of time, but when you think about sustainable and scale, that's where technology comes into play. And so I would say technology plays an extremely important part in advancing not only our academic and research mission, but also clinical care and administrative services as well.
Can you just sort of talk through where technology specifically is focused on? You talked about clinical and research. Is it sort of 50-50?
It's a very blurred line for us.
Yeah.
Because, like I said earlier, we want to learn from every child. When we're seeing catastrophic diseases, so we're getting very sick children that were coming into the doors and becoming a St. Jude patient, we want to learn from them. So most of our children are on some type of therapeutic trial. So trials in the context of clinical care is a very blurred area for us. And that data that is used to treat that child is then used in advancement of knowledge. So that's one piece of that blurred line that I talked about. But then behind that, when we talk about knowledge and discovery, we can't advance our understanding of disease without understanding at a cellular level, at a molecular level. And so we've got some really strong basic science programs that are trying to understand how drugs and the combination of drugs and what's those protein structures and how do we deal with that at a molecular level as well.
And what does St Jude do differently as it relates to technology that other hospitals do?
I would say from the perspective of doing differently, there's some great organizations out there in the world that are really advancing knowledge and how do we treat and understand the disease and the complexities of it. Where I would say St. Jude is unique and different is we're solely focused. So our focus is on how do we eradicate pediatric catastrophic disease, which narrows in our level of understanding and how we want to approach our research, how we want to approach our science, and how do we want to approach clinical care.
So I understand that St Jude has quite a bit of high-performance computing. What exactly does a hospital use high-performance computing for?
We use that in combination of things. So everything from how do we think about radiation dosing to how do we think about protein structures and how do we visualize what's happening with a cancer cell or even a normal cell to be able to either align that data or take noise out of that data or to find some commonality and compare that image from one image to the other.
And so what does a high-performance computer give you over, say, just some normal compute? Like, what additional things can you do with it that you maybe couldn't have done before?
That's an interesting question. With catastrophic disease for that family, for that child, what they want is time. And so there's a real sense of urgency that we have at St. Jude around we need to advance every day. And so when you take that and put that in the context of high performance compute versus traditional compute, we're pushing the availability to get knowledge into the hands of our researchers and scientists and clinicians faster than we could in other means, to give them time, either the clinician time to think about the problem differently, or our patients and families time so that they're not waiting for a treatment plan to be developed or a dosing calculation to happen.
I've never really sort of heard of that from that perspective before. On this show, we've talked to other organizations that have high performance computing, and sometimes they say we can get calculations faster. But I think that the concept of the fact that you're dealing with humans, real people, families, children, and actually if you can process that data, get answers faster, I suppose you're talking about a direct impact on somebody's life.
Absolutely. So I'll put it into context. So if you're getting radiation therapy or proton beam therapy, there's a certain number of calculations that need to be done in order to make sure that that beam is where it should be. And it takes high performance computers that are really aligned in order to deliver those results sooner. We used to have to do that over a week, and now we can do that over a period of time. So you as a family are not being told, well, come back in a week and we'll have your treatment. Because that week, there's uncertainty and anxiety every moment of the day when your child or your loved one has cancer that you really want to push and have a sense of urgency.
I'd love to just talk about diagnosis. Can you sort of talk through how you are using technology to help with things like imaging and diagnosis?
Yeah, so we've got a fantastic radiology group that is bringing AI into the pediatric space. The challenge in pediatrics is there's not that many cases. And so we're having to collaborate worldwide or collaborate within the US. The aim is to help our radiologists to identify those tumors faster, whether they're growing or shrinking or staying the same, and then subtyping those images and classifications as well.
And are you developing new technologies on site for this? I mean, you talked about AI. Presumably the field of AI as it relates to medical imaging is probably moving quite quickly.
I would say our uniqueness is we're solely focused on catastrophic pediatric disease. So our focus is on how do we help around those diseases that we have the most knowledge on.
And working, communicating, collaborating with other hospitals doing similar things, is that a vital process to this?
One of the foundational components of St. Jude is we recognize that we can't do this alone. So there's great work being done all across the world. And so we want to be there to help and not only be there as a resource for people, but to be there and use our expertise to advance the discovery as well.
Do you have to change the approach to using machine learning for diagnosis because it's a hospital specializing in pediatrics?
I would say the answer is yes and no. So yes, from the perspective of what I talked about earlier from the pediatric, the cases are small so that we really need to focus our efforts on collaboration. No, it's no different than an adult cancer center that's working with AI and how that you have to go through a process to make sure that you understand those results, that you validated those results, and that those results are repeatable. And that's where you follow the academic process to be able to go through that particular study to validate your hypothesis, if you will.
Yeah. So when it comes to treatments, how are you using high-performance computing to help develop new or bespoke treatments?
So we're doing some really things around how do we think about the protein structure and how does that help with drug development, which is really kind of going to lead us into that bespoke drug treatment paradigm where we're able to have drugs.
So is that where you sort of understand the patient's who they are, then you can say, right, this drug and this drug is perfect for this patient, or maybe this combination of this drug is perfect for this patient in this dosage.
That's a great way to characterize that. Now, I will stay up front that I'm not a medical doctor. I'm a technologist that has been in the industry for a while, but I think you summed it up really well.
What impact will that have on both patients, families, and a wider organization?
As a non-medical person that has had somebody with cancer in my life, it gives hope, right? So it gives hope that the thing that's going inside my body or that's going into my loved one's body is really developed and bespoke to them. And that gives us hope of life, if you will.
Well, let's then talk research, because obviously St Jude Children's Research Hospital has research in the name. What sort of research do you carry out?
So our faculty are really questioning and challenging and interrogating what's the direction based upon their knowledge. And that leads us into future research endeavors. But it's all coming back to catastrophic pediatric disease, starting at the cellular level to the protein that I was talking about, all the way through clinical trials that kind of lead to that clinical care and treatment.
And how, as an organization, do you decide what it is that you do research on?
So what I would say is a combination of needs within our patients and the expertise of our faculty really guide us where we're going next in the direction that we're heading from a research perspective.
And how vital is the technology in being able to do this research?
I think it's foundational. You can't advance most therapeutic trials or most clinical research without some underlying technology, whether that be high performance computer or how are you storing that data and making sense out of that data.
Medical research has been going on in its current form, I suppose, for decades. I mean, arguably centuries.
Yes.
How has sort of technology impacted that? Is it just that the research can be done faster, as we talked about earlier, or is it the technology can actually achieve different results?
I'm probably not qualified to say that we could get different results with or without technology. I will say that it's been an underpinning for as long as I can remember, but in my career, that technology plays an extremely important part in advancing scientific discovery.
Because I think if you picture medical research, or even just you just picture a lab, don't you? Lab coats with microscopes. It's sort of hard to understand, where does technology fit into that?
Usually it's on the back end. So we're working with our researchers on the instruments that they're either using or developing themselves are producing data. That data has to go somewhere, and you have to make sense out of the value of the data, but also the noise in the data that you have to find a way to eliminate. And so that's where computers come in and are really being used today now that with advancements in AI and others. And so I just see it as foundational for our future.
So are you already seeing the benefits of this technology in healthcare outcomes?
Yes. And I think that we're going to see more and more each day. So I think that there's some great studies across the globe that are happening right now. So we'll continue to see the advancements and the use of technology to further our understanding of disease, and also how do we treat and how do we diagnose, treat, and then follow up on diseases in the future.
Do you connect with your peers in other hospitals and sort of share ideas on how they're using technology, or, share how you're using technology?
Yeah, within the healthcare community in general, there is a sense of purpose that we all share. We know why we're here. We know how technology plays a role. And so there's really, within the IT or technology community within healthcare, there's a really strong purpose of sharing and non-competitiveness, if you will. I think just within the technology space, there's a sense of collaboration.
So you're dealing with medical data, quite sensitive data in some instances, unless it's anonymized. How do you think about security?
You can't ignore security. We have data that's identifiable. We have data that's de-identifiable. We have data at rest. We have data that's in transit, if you will. All of that has to have some component of security to it. And our security team's really good, because you can be dictatorial and say you can't do that, or you can say, let's find a way to help make sure that the data is secure while at the same time advancing how information is shared, because data needs to be shared. And that's something that we take very seriously. And so our security team really walks alongside our researchers and understanding what are they trying to accomplish, and then coming behind them and alongside them on how's the best way to keep that data secure.
Because there's that sort of what feels like a balancing act.
It's a risk management balancing act.
To some extent, you want to just secure the data and not let anyone access it. But if nobody can access it, then you can't do anything with that data. The data's not useful. You may as well just not have it.
I tell people we're sitting on top of this data, but that's not doing us any good. That's not advancing our mission. So we've got to figure out a way to be able to freely share that data in a secure way that doesn't put patients' information at risk or jeopardize a research study.
And so how do you share this data, or any data, outside of your organization?
We've developed St Jude Cloud, which is our way of freely sharing our genomic data and other tools and models with the world. And so we freely share that data with researchers across the globe.
And on that, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure having a conversation with you.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Wow. Well, despite the topic for that interview, I thought it was really nice that thematically it felt like it was just about buying people more time, more bespoke care, and hope.
I've done quite a few interviews with people talking about high-performance computing, and the question always comes, what does this bring you that your laptop won't, for example? And often they talk about high resolution, you can predict more, or you can get answers faster. But I found it incredibly humbling when he was like, yeah, you essentially give patients more time, you give their families more time, you get knowledge to the researchers and the clinicians faster, you can come up with a treatment plan faster. Having had children in the hospital, I know that feeling of that anxiety of you're just waiting for an answer. And I mean, even waiting 24 hours is horrible. So yeah, how technology can be used to bring people hope. I just find it quite humbling because I think we're surrounded by technology. This feels like it's a completely different level.
It is an incredibly humbling and an admirable mission. He said they're solely focused on pediatric catastrophic disease, but the tech plays a role from administrative pieces like records to the actual clinical care. And I imagine, even though they're only focused on pediatric catastrophic disease, it probably has applications they learn that eventually extend to adult care, so everyone benefits, right?
And I think actually maybe one of the things is that sharing data. And we talked about that balancing act of, it's basically two sides. Give everyone access to all the data, give no one access to any data, and trying to find a middle ground there. He talks about the St Jude cloud. I think we briefly talked about medical imaging, radiology, getting lots of data. And there's not loads of data for pediatrics relative to, say, people my age, so they have to be a bit more clever. And I think he talked about collaborating with other organisations, other hospitals. That was really interesting because I think, again, you don't necessarily think about that when you think about medical research. The thought of that sort of collaboration, the sort of thought of that data being pulled together so other families don't have to go through a similar situation, or if they do, that situation is, much less severe. Yeah, speaking as a parent, that's something that I think would make things feel like a teeny tiny bit better.
The tiny little silver lining that there is.
Now, Sam, what Keith and the team at St Jude do is amazing. So something I really wanted to ask him was how he ended up where he was.
I tell people I fell into healthcare several years ago, and I just fell in love with that. You can call it an intersection, but it's the disruptive nature of technology, which I kind of grew up in. That's my academic journey. But then healthcare is extremely disruptive too. We know very little about disease and what happens with the human body and how different we all are. And just the marriage of those two was really unique to me. And I really kind of fell in love with that. But I'll say what really motivates me is, and I mentioned I never met one of my grandmothers. One of my other grandmother passed away when I was 9. I've lost my mother and my sister to cancer. And so that drives me to how can I, as a technologist, make sure that my purpose is helping to advance knowledge discovery.
Okay, well, that does bring us to the end of Technology Now for this week. Thank you so much to our guest, Keith Parry. And of course, to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us.
And if you've enjoyed this episode, please do let us know, rate and review us wherever you listen to episodes. And if you want to get in contact with us, do make sure you send us an email to technologynow@hp.com. Subject line, Sam?
Wilhelm Rurchinger, however you think that last name is spelled.
Yes, good luck. Good luck with spelling that. And don't forget to subscribe so you can listen first every week. Technology Now is hosted by Sam, Jarrell and myself, Michael Bird. And this episode was produced by Harry Lampert and Izzy Clark, with production support from Alicia Kempson-Taylor, Becky Bird, Jodie True, Alyssa Mitri and Renee Edwards.
Our social editorial team is Rebecca Wissinger, Judy N. Goldman, and Jacqueline Green. And our social media designers are Alejandra Garcia and Ambar Maldonado.
Technology Now is a Fresh Air production for Hewlett Packard Enterprise. And we'll see you at the same time, the same place next week.
Bye, y'all.
Cheers.